Hi, I'm Chris for TrailTubes, and today I'm going to show you how to fabricate a bolt-on set of rear fender flares using TrailTubes pre-bend rear fender flare tube. The first step is determining how wide you want your fender flares to be and then marking it on the tube. We're going to go with 4.5 inches. So now we're ready to cut our tube, and you can pretty much use about anything. You can use a hacksaw, chop saw, grinder, sawzall, just whatever you have on hand. And you're just going to want to make sure you cut it directly on your line, and it needs to be the same size on both ends. So once you cut your first tube, you want to go ahead and make sure it's right exactly where you want it. Go ahead and measure it up on the Jeep and everything. And then when that one's perfect, you want to go ahead and measure it out on the other tubes so they're the exact same length. Once you've cut your flare tubes to width, you're going to want to use cardboard to make a mounting plate so you can mount them to the body of the Jeep. We're going to do that by tracing out the fender flare onto the cardboard. So you want a pretty good sized piece of cardboard. Leaving room on either side to extend it out, depending where you mount it on the actual body of the Jeep. Next step, you want to go ahead and cut the top line off of your template, and you want to make sure it is as close to exact as possible, because this is what you're going to use to align it with the top of the body, and then after that you're going to transfer it to the metal. Next thing you want to do is you want to take your template and put it on the actual body of the Jeep. And at this point, it's helpful to have a friend come in and hold the template. And you're going to measure it out to your desired height. And I went with 1.5 inches. You can pretty much get all the bolt holes if you go anywhere between 1.5 inches and 2.5 inches. So you want to measure it from the same spot at the top of the tub and make sure it's level all the way across. And that is 1.5 inches all the way across, so that's where I'm going to keep it. The next step is going ahead and drying the wheel well on the inside. You actually have to climb up under the Jeep, and this is another point where it's helpful to not have the tire on the Jeep. So pretty much what you want to do is just draw the inside of the wheel well on the other side of the cardboard. The next step is, after you've traced the inside of your wheel well out on your template, you want to go ahead and cut that out. And that needs to be as exact as possible because that's the line that you're going to use on the metal. The next step is, once you've cut out the wheel well on your template, you want to go ahead and use a punch and punch the bolt holes through on the other side. It's easier to do it from the inside out, so you want to go ahead and find your bolt holes and just punch through it. Watch your fingers. Right like that, and then you can put the hardware in through that hole, and you can go ahead and mount the template to the body. When you're doing this, you want to make sure you watch your fingers so you don't put the punch right through your finger too. That'd be very bad. After you punch out all your holes, you want to go ahead and put all your hardware in to make sure that the top edge of your template doesn't interfere with any of the hardware. And at that point, you're ready to take your template off and trace it onto the metal. Once you've finalized and cut out your template, the next step is to trace it out on a piece of steel. And right now I'm using a 14 gauge piece of sheet metal. Once Once you've traced your template out, the next step is to go ahead and mark out where all the hardware is going to be drilled. That way you can go ahead and pre-drill it before you install it, because sometimes when you cut the metal, it hardens up a little bit. So it's better to just go ahead and drill ahead of time. Once you've gone ahead and marked where your hardware is going to be, you want to go ahead and drill those holes out. Once those holes are drilled, you're ready to start cutting. This is where you have a few options. You can use a torch to cut the metal. You can go ahead and use a grinder with a cutting wheel. You could use a Sawzall, plasma cutter, really lots of options here. We're going to go ahead and use a plasma cutter because we have one easily available on hand, and it'll cut through the metal really easily. Once you've cut out your backing plate and ground all your edges down so everything's smooth, you're ready to go ahead and tack your tubes onto it. Once you lay your tubes on your backing plate, you want to check for alignment, and I'm doing that using a square on all three sides. So pretty much you want to make sure that it's aligned on all three sides, all the way around. And I'm doing it on at least 2 points. You can do as many points as you want, but you probably want to do at least 2 points on each side. Once you've got everything aligned, you're ready to tack all your tubes together and then tack your tubes to the backing plate. Once you've tacked the tubes onto the backing plate, you're going to go back to cardboard to create another template to make the flare part of the Fender flare. I kept the template to the same width as the flare, and I'm currently laying it down. I'm going to tape it to the actual tubes, and I'm going to determine what the length of the template needs to be. Once you've taped your template onto your tubes, you want to go ahead and trace the end to match the radius. Once you've gone ahead and traced the radius of the tubes onto the template, you're going to go ahead and cut it out with your razor. Once you've cut out your template, you're ready to put it on your metal and go ahead and trace it out. You can do both sides at this time. The next step, once you've cut out the flat portion of your Fender flare, is to go ahead and line it up on the tubes. And once you've got everything lined up, it helps to throw some marks on there so you don't lose your place. And at this point, it's also helpful to have another person with you, kind of holding everything in place, keeping it aligned while you check. And once you've got it on there, you can go ahead and start tacking from the bottom up. And once you want to put them on either side of the inside of the tube, and you want to space them out periodically. Once you get up to the top with it, you can start bending it over, bending the actual flat part of your flare over the tube, and once that's flat down, have your partner hold that side down, and then you're going to tack that side, and then you can do the final side. And we'll show you what that looks like right here. What we noticed when we were tacking the flat part of the Fender onto the backer plate was that the tube and the flat plate were kind of spaced out, and we couldn't quite get them together with our hands. So what we decided to do was use C-clamps, and we're going to walk them around and tack in between them. So we're just going to move each C-clamp down and tack in between to make sure we can get the plate flush up against the tube. Once you get everything welded together, you want to go ahead and run the grinder down the edges of your welds. And depending on how skilled you are at welding will depend on how much grinding you're going to do. On mine, I grinded the edges so that it was completely smooth all the way around. So when it's painted, it will look like old welds. And once you grind your welds, get it painted, bolt it up, and enjoy.